So we can edit and move these UVs around in the UV editor, and you'll particularly want to edit these whenever you have a more complicated object, which I'll show you in just a second. So this object right now has its basic default UV layout. We can see how these correspond to faces on our actual object. So we have a face up here and a face right here, and we can see how they correspond to each other. And if we really wanted to, we could move these around just with the same WER that we use in the viewport. We can use in the UV editor to move around our different UVs. But whenever we actually build our model, it's easiest to use some of these auto creation tools. And I'll show you how one of them in particular works. And then if you check your terms handout sheet, that has kind of the use cases of the others. But basically, they each have their own little nuances. And what they will do is automatically generate useful UV coordinates for you to work with your models. So, for example, this one right here, which is called automatic generation, is probably the most useful and widely used. What it's basically doing is it takes a picture of your object from 6 different sides, and then it lays out the UVs in here based on that picture, or those series of pictures. So I'm just going to click that button. I have my object selected. I'm just going to click automatic UVs. And you can actually see these are like the different little cameras floating around my object. And if I go back to my UV editor, I can see it's completely changed how my UVs function and how they look. So for example, if I want to grab this UV now, hit W and move it over the center, I can now move it over the center. I could hit E to rotate it. Let's say I want this text to be properly displayed across 3 of them. So I'll take this other UV over here, do the same thing. I'm going to just rotate it so that it matches correctly. Okay. And then I'm going to take this middle UV on this side, move it over here, and do the same kind of thing. So rotate it just to fix it up. There's other tools within here that can help you refine these. In particular, there's like straightening of the UVs. There's a ton of different ways of doing this, and I want you to kind of play around with this interface, but you can see we can start to create some interesting layouts. We can stack UVs, so we could have every single one of these stacked in the same spot, and they'll all be reading the same spot of texture data. So I give them this 2D image, and they're all reading the same part of that image. We can also scale UVs, just like we can use the scale tool on our model. I can grab a UV shell, and let's just scale this one up. And you can see how the perspective shifts over here. Then the next step is going to be exporting this UV layout so that we can work with it in Photoshop and create our own custom textures.